in our bed the day we got married. Madam Contest here, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. This story started in 2007, the day before Father's Day. I had been doing renovation in my house for quite a while, about 5 years, and I had come to an end. And finally, I had to cut one plank of wood, and it would be done. So I took a 1x4 piece of wood, and I took it to the table saw in my backyard, a brand new table saw that I bought. And I started cutting the wood, and everything is going wonderfully well. Now I'm a very safety conscious DIYer. I put on my glasses, my safety glasses, ear protectors, took my wedding ring off, did everything I needed to do, and while I was cutting the wood, I heard a ping. It sounded like the bell at a high striker at a fairground. Well, I looked at my hand and I noticed a little bleeding. So I thought to myself, how bad can it be? So I yelled out to my wife, who was out in the front yard doing some gardening. I said, Karen, I think I need a couple of stitches. Can you please take me to the local emergency? So she did. She took me in the car. Of course, she was panicking at that time. She didn't even bring me a bandage. She just brought a towel, wrapped up my hand, and took me to the local hospital. While I was there, and I was, the wait can be quite long. So while I was waiting at the emergency, I decided to undo the towel and take a look and see how many stitches I might need. 2, 3, 4. I looked, and I started counting, and I noticed there were only 3 fingers. At that point, I thought, well, I said to my wife, can you please come in here into the room? And I said, can you go home and just look around the yard? This might find a spare finger. So of course, by this point, my wife is panicking, and I'm calm as a cucumber. And she goes out, drives the car, has a little fender bender on the way, but she goes home to look for the spare finger. Now she comes back. Once she's gone, I'm thinking, what a wonderful wife. The wedding vow she made. And that she also said that in sickness and in health, she would stay beside me. And this was the moment, this was the testing moment, to see if she was going to carry out her vows. About 15 minutes later, she walks into the hospital, and she just gives me the finger. On ice, in a Ziploc bag. At that point, I think, not too bad. How bad could it be? They could sew it back. They can do amazing things. They can send a man to the Mars and maybe a comet. On a comet, they can send a satellite. So, they decided to take me to the hospital in Winnipeg. Now, they took me in an ambulance. Of course, she could have driven me, but I guess it's illegal to drive a man with 3 fingers. So, she could have driven me, but they took me in an ambulance. While I was there, I waited for quite a while, about 6 hours at the health sciences. While waiting, I waited and waited and waited. There was a nurse that comes out, a young, very young nurse in hospital green. She actually looked like Xena, the warrior princess, if you remember. She even had the sandals right up to her knees. And I followed her, and she says, could you please sit down here? Introduces herself. I says, I'm Xena. Oh, sorry. She says, I'm Jennifer. I was thinking Xena. And while I'm sitting there, she looks at my hand and decides to, and then speaks to me and says, I think I'm going to have to cut a little bit more off. I'm going to have to cut another finger off. And I don't think this finger will be sewn here. At that point, I was thinking to myself, really, you shouldn't be commenting on these things. You should be waiting for the plastic surgeon to come and give me an opinion, because he can probably sew it back on. Very sexist comment, because she says to me, I'm a plastic surgeon, I have been one for quite a long time. I hadn't even touched her, I did not lay a hand on her, but she had mutilated my hand by then and taken half a finger off. So I ended up with 2.5 instead of the 3 that I started off with, 4 earlier on that day. Now I'm in the hospital waiting, and my son-in-law comes in. I have a couple of daughters. And to save money and time, we got them married the same weekend. One was married on a Friday, one on a Saturday. But one of my son-in-laws comes and says, Dad, there's something so different about you. But I just can't put my finger on it. But you know, when I came out of the hospital, I had a new identity because I went to Granthal. I work among farmers. And now I felt really important because walking at high noon in Granthal, I felt like the two-fingered John, you know. Really important. My hand by then had shrunk quite a lot. And I decided to do some exercises. And I decided to join the local aquatic center and to do exercises, because that's what I should do. But I find that all women there. Everyone's a woman. I'm the only guy. So, you know, I didn't want to be accused of voyeurism, so I go in the front, and they're all behind me. So I guess they're the ones who get the good looks. While I exercise, you know, it all works well when I started getting strength. And then, a few years later, I joined Toastmasters. And there, the Lieutenant Governor of Education and Training, Sylvia Barton, Nelson Barton, walks in. I'd never seen her with her clothes on. At the aquatic center, she was in a swimsuit. One of the things having this is I can now teach fractions. My wife has made sure I'll never get married because there's no ring finger. And ladies and gentlemen, my advice to you, when you make wedding vows, make sure you're just not given the finger.